Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Dzintars. I am a senior counselor at the Counseling Center at SUNY Oswego. Today, our program is Making Space for Your Mental Health. I'll be running through, starting the semester off, how do we maintain our mental health? How do we take care of ourselves best? And really, how do we think about mental health during the pandemic? So I feel like some of the stuff will be common sense, just things that we need to keep in mind as we move forward in the semester. Some of this I hope is helpful for getting you connected with resources or services if you need. And obviously there'll be time to answer some questions, or you can reach out to us if you have any questions in the future. I'm recording this hopefully so that people can watch it in the future if they're not able to attend or be here for this. So if you do have questions, make sure you check out our contact information. I'll put that up in our future slide here. So to get us started with making space for our mental health, I set a little bit of an agenda for today for this program. So first I'll go over the expectations, how our programs are running, what to expect if you are attending one of our Zoom workshops or programs. I'll address some of the common experiences that we're experiencing. What are we going through during this time? Some ways that we take care of our mental health, or we can be attentive to our mental health. I'll go over our counseling services information, especially for students who might be interested or unsure if they want to go into counseling. I'll cover some of the basics, how you can get set up with a counselor, and some of the other services we have available. We'll do a little activity before you go, and then I'll make some time at the end for questions and answer. So that's the plan for today. And just as a little disclaimer, this information isn't a replacement for clinical services. So if you are seeking individual therapy, you're going to have a very different experience. This is some basic overview information to hopefully get you set up with some resources or services. But also, I want to make sure that this isn't confused as a clinical service. This is more of education. And then how do you take the first step into getting set up with clinical services? If you do experience any kind of overwhelming emotions while you're listening in, or you're struggling in this time, if you experience a crisis, I would say call 911 or go to the nearest emergency room if you're worried about your safety or someone else's safety. And know that there are support systems in place if some of this stuff does bring up overwhelming emotions. In terms of privacy and confidentiality, we can't guarantee that during our programs and workshops, especially online, but we do ask participants to just be respectful of other people's privacy. If someone asks a question or covers a certain topic and a comment that they're making, just make sure that you keep that private and don't bring that to other people who might not be here for that. And then you don't have permission to record this workshop because we're recording it and we'll be putting it on our website. And then any use of the material, we just ask that you contact us to get permission to use that. My contact information will be available. So just reach out to me if you want this presentation for one of your clubs or organizations, maybe a department on campus. I'm happy to do that. And then if you have any additional questions, you can contact the office there, extension 4416. Okay. So because we're still virtual and on Zoom, some of the expectations of how this unfolds is we're going to be presenting throughout this program. I'll make time at the end for some interaction, asking questions, getting some answers, having some discussion. But mostly for this presentation, I just ask that you remain muted. You don't have to be on camera or participate verbally. And I would direct you during the program to just put anything that you have to say in the chat. So if it's comments, questions, perfect place for that. We'll get to them at the end. And then, as I mentioned, this will be recorded and available on the Counseling Center website. All right. So let's dive in here. We are starting this semester off still in our global pandemic, still having some of the same challenges and obstacles and stressors that we had in the previous semester. I like to cover these common experiences because I think it's very easy for people to feel alone in what they're going through. And this is a really important place to start to feel connected. start to be vulnerable and share our authentic experiences of this, because it's not easy. I think it's very easy to see people maybe who are doing well in this and say, like, why can't I do that? But I think a lot of people internally, maybe that they don't show to other people, have their own struggles. So some of the things that I've heard from students, from faculty, from staff, from friends and family that we're all kind of experiencing in different ways are the stress and uncertainty, right? Like not knowing for sure when things are going to be back to whatever normal's going to be. Knowing that we still have to keep up a lot of our obligations or responsibilities. It's a lot of stress. We're doing everything differently and still expected to do the things that we were doing before COVID. The grief of what we've lost. I mean, students especially, you're going through a semester of college that you never imagined having to go through. This isn't really what you signed up for. This isn't what college was supposed to be. So I think a lot of the grief and loss part is, how do we deal with what is now? Adjustment, so having to adjust to whatever the semester does bring. I've already heard from students that, some of the expectations for what classes are is really hard to keep up with. You're adjusting to having to learn all of this new technology or having to stay connected with people in all these new ways. It's definitely not easy. I think there's so much adjustment and there's so much that we're learning and having to keep up with at the same time. Because we're in a pandemic, we're still having worries about our safety and our health. I mean, those are very valid concerns to have. As we've started having like vaccine rollout and people starting to feel maybe a little bit safer, there's still some chaos and uncertainty about what that's going to look like. And really not a clear picture for when things will be like quote unquote normal. So those worries about safety and social distancing, wearing masks, washing your hands. I think there's a lot of stuff that we're still keeping up with because we want to make sure that we are healthy. Mood swings, still feeling these ones myself. I'm sure you can relate. Sometimes there are changes in our moods that we're not used to. It's hard to go through all these times of uncertainty and know what to feel at any given moment. Sometimes we're doing well, we're productive, we're feeling good, we're keeping up with stuff, we're staying connected. Other times, maybe we don't want to get out of bed. Maybe we don't want to deal with all the stuff that we have to do. I think that's pretty normal right now, as hard as it is, and as much as maybe we don't want that to be. So just know that if you're experiencing that stuff, I think a lot of people are. Struggle to focus, online school all the time, being connected to Zoom and websites and everything. That makes it really hard to focus. We're using a lot of things that have been created to keep our attention all at once, right? So being on your phone, being on your laptop, watching TV, it's just a constant array of distraction. And I think it's really hard to find a place of focus in this. So if you're struggling with that, I understand. It is not easy to sit in front of all of these screens and not really have options outside of a screen. Isolation or less time with others. So again, are we able to stay connected with people? And I think technology offers us a lot of ways to stay connected, but sometimes it's still hard. It's very different than being in person with people that you care about. And then new traumas, because this is a global traumatic experience. I mean, there's no question. We're all experiencing like a major disruption to the way things were. And that is traumatic to us. We've learned entirely new ways of doing things. And then some people are having some of their past trauma come back up. And that is difficult to deal with. When we experience new traumas, sometimes it triggers some of the old stuff that's either unresolved or just that, we've worked through, but it's still there. It's still something we've gone through. So if you are experiencing some of the emotions around those past traumas, again, pretty normal response to this situation. So we're going to work, at least in the rest of the program, trying to help you build some ways to cope with this. And I feel like it's really important to stress that all of these things might be happening at different times. They might be affecting people in different ways. Just know that you're not alone in that, as much as maybe it feels like that sometimes. So how do we care for our mental health with all of that stuff going on, all these emotions that we're dealing with? I think a good starting point is learning the practice of self-compassion and kindness to yourself. So we spend much more time with ourselves than we do anybody else, even outside of COVID. The time we have by ourselves, alone, with our thoughts, with our feelings, just kind of being, is a really important time to introduce some self-compassion. I've heard from a lot of people that they're struggling with the like kind of being hard on themselves or not feeling good enough or feeling like they should be better at something or doing something better. Um, when there's more time spent alone with that, it ends up just becoming like self-bullying, self-judgment. And that takes a toll on us. So if anything, I'd encourage you to learn to not be your own bully, to be able to allow yourself to be kind to yourself and give yourself a little bit of grace and peace and, okay, I'm dealing with all of this stuff. What can I do to just make sure that I'm appreciating how much effort I am putting into stuff? So if you can find moments just to be kind and understanding to yourself, I think that's a really good place to start because we can't get that from other people. We do need that inner work for ourselves. Sleep. This is a biggie. I've heard this has been a huge disruption for a lot of people. Making sure that we have like a sleep schedule in place where we're getting enough sleep, where we're not struggling to have energy throughout the day because we need all the energy we can get at this point is really crucial. Sometimes it gets harder in isolation in I think the disruption of our life to have a routine down. And I found, and maybe some of you can relate to this, but if I'm on my phone too long right before bed, there is no way I'm going to have a good night's sleep. Enough TikTok, enough scrolling. It's just hard to fall asleep and feel rested. So sometimes I think it's really important to monitor how much screen time you have right before bed. I would definitely recommend at least a half hour before bed. Maybe do something non-screen related. That could be a short meditation. That could be reading a book. Could be sitting around painting, drawing, coloring. Do something that isn't on a screen. It changes the whole way our bodies are operating and it allows us to ease into sleep versus a screen, which keeps us alert and awake, gets our brains going in a different way. So if you can practice some kind of relaxation before bed, I think that's the best approach to creating rest and just trying to get in a normal sleep pattern, as hard as that may be. Overlaps with the next one here. So limit your time on your devices. I think there's only so much scrolling we can do. I mean, our brains and our bodies can do a lot of it. And especially with apps, right? They're designed to keep our attention there, to keep us kind of hooked and scrolling. Sometimes we have to resist that for our own mental clarity. It's very easy to live in that distracted world and to lose kind of a focus on what's important to us. So if there are times where maybe a little bit of scrolling, a little bit of social media, a little bit of connection through screens is good, great. If you notice that it starts to get in the way or you're just feeling exhausted and defeated all the time, maybe make some space for other things in that. I found reading and painting especially can be really helpful as a way to just let yourself be involved in something else. So don't let the Zoom fatigue get you down. With classes being online too, there's a lot of that happening. So monitor how much time you're spending and notice if you are feeling exhausted. Get outside when safe and possible. I know some of you are in Oswego, New York, which today is not a great day to be outside. But if there are those days where you're not in the middle of a snowstorm, there's a little bit of sun, maybe take a short stroll, go around the campus, take a walk around the block, just spend a little bit of time outside in nature. There's so much research to back the fact that that changes the way our bodies are working. It helps us to feel better and more connected to the world around us. So give yourself this time to do that, even if it's just like 10 minutes a day. There's a lot of research that shows that's beneficial. So go look at the snow, go stare at some trees, take a stroll. Make time for yourself. So I think the biggest challenge that I've heard from students throughout this pandemic is not finding the time to actually dedicate to self-care. Because when there is time for it, there's like guilt about not being productive, right? Like, how can I spend time relaxing when all I do is stay in my apartment? But we really do have to be intentional about like setting that time for it to be that. That way we don't feel guilt. We don't carry around any other emotional baggage that makes it self-defeating. Can you say to yourself, for the next hour, I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and that is perfectly okay? That could be exercise. That could be lounging on the couch. That could be making a meal. That could be going for a walk. Make the time for yourself and stick to it. I think you'll find that you have more freedom and more confidence in how you go about things. And then make time for others. I think it's very important for us to feel like we're supported, right? We have other people we can turn to, but also supportive for others. That makes us feel good. We can also help other people who are going through this, give them space to talk and for us to listen. I think there's a nice way that we can balance that. And know if it's not the right time for you to be a good listener. We're not always good listeners. Sometimes we just need time to like sit with ourselves or do what we need to do for ourselves. But when you're feeling pretty energized and available, maybe give that to somebody who needs it. It'll help you feel good too. And I will stress, just avoid judging how well you're doing any of this stuff. You know, there will be times where, yeah, sleep schedule's off. It's not feeling so great. There'll be times where you're doing really well about staying disconnected from screens. There'll be times where it's important to just check in with yourself. Am I keeping up with this? Do I need a little bit more of something else? Can I give myself a little bit more of something? Is there something that I need to limit? Self-assess. There'll be times that I think are really helpful for checking in with yourself. Additionally, we have some ideas here for practicing. I think good self-care, helpful self-care, and knowing, I guess, what you need for yourself. So exercise, I think, can be really helpful. It comes in a lot of different forms, right? Like, you don't have to go to the gym and lift weights. You can. You can just go for a walk, get your body moving, help your body kind of take care of its physical self. I really have valued yoga during this time. It's something I can do in my house, something I can make space for. There's so many videos to follow along with. I think that's been a really helpful tool during this. And online workouts there's so many of them. Even if you just go on YouTube and start looking up different workouts, you'll find something that fits for you. So just know that that stuff's available, and it's so vital to keep our bodies moving when we aren't moving as much as we usually do. Practicing mindfulness. So meditation is a good one, just giving yourself space to sit and to sort through what you're thinking. Sometimes we're overwhelmed by our thoughts, or we get lost in the thought world, right? You kind of think of all the things you have to do or all the things you're worried about. You replay a lot of these like situations that have happened. So helping yourself to be able to break that cycle of thinking, to just notice what you're thinking, notice how you're feeling, and just be okay with that, I think is really powerful. Mindful eating can be really helpful too. So just knowing and trusting like what you feel in your body and then making decisions about that. It's so easy during this time to like go grab a snack or continuously eat throughout the day. And maybe that doesn't make you feel good. I think a lot of people are struggling with that routine as well. So can you get to a place of just listening intuitively to your body? It tells you when it's hungry, tells you when it needs something like water, and listening to that carefully. Mindful walking can be really good. Doesn't take going outside if you are in a snowstorm. You can do this even in a small space. Just noticing slow movement of walking around. What does it feel like in your body to keep moving? What does it feel like when you put your feet to the ground? When you lift your knee, bend your knees, put your other foot on the ground? just doing that very consciously. And then, as I already mentioned, yoga can be a really powerful mindfulness tool as well. Creativity gives us a sense of control in a time when we don't have a lot of control of what's going on in the world. So that comes in a lot of different forms. You don't have to be super talented or some, professional artist to go about this stuff, but just try and make something. Maybe you enjoy writing, so you just take up journaling, write a short story, write a poem. Maybe it's painting. You have a watercolor set, you have some acrylics, maybe you bought a little paint kit. Just make something. Let yourself go with it. Dancing is so powerful, especially for traumatic experiences that we're kind of getting through. We have to connect more with our physical body. Dancing is such a good way to break like the rigid experiences that we get caught in, right? Like we have to be in our chair, we have to be sitting like properly, we have to go and do this and keep up with this. Dancing lets us really just like let loose. And I think the more we're able to do that and be free, I think the better we feel. It's a good place to find joy in a very stressful time. So put on some good music, something you enjoy, and just like give yourself 10 minutes to dance, let loose, be silly. If you're in your own space, who cares, right? Like no one's going to see you doing it. Let loose. Singing also. So shower singers out there, car singers, let yourself have space to just sing along with lyrics and songs that mean something to you. Playing can mean so many different things. That could be board games, that could be just being playful, joking around with people in your house or family. Just be playful. Let yourself be free of having to do things a certain way and see what happens. And I know I mentioned a few creative activities you can do here, but there's so many. Like experiment, see what works for you. Next up, practicing healthy boundaries. I've heard from a lot of people in general that it's hard to set boundaries during this time with the amount of work we have to do, with the amount of productivity we have to do, with the amount of emails we get, like knowing when it's okay to shut off. I think sometimes it's already difficult outside of COVID to do that, but even more so now when we're doing everything in the same place. I think it's a little bit easier when we have to go to classes and be in those environments. And then we walk out of the classroom and we can let it go for a little bit. Here, maybe we don't have that same feeling. It's hard to stop checking your email. It's hard to feel like you can't not do work. So know that it is okay to say no sometimes. It's okay to not check your emails when you don't need to. It's okay to say, all right, I'm done with work for today. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to do some self-care. I'm going to go watch TV. Let yourself say no to the things that you don't need to do. And then it's okay to create space from others when you need to. I mean, being on Zoom like this all the time, maybe there's times where we just need alone, quiet time where we don't have to meet anybody else's emotional needs or expectations. We can just be who we are and be still. So make sure that you're setting those kind of boundaries for yourself, how you need to. I would say the flip is also true. If you're finding yourself more isolated, maybe the boundary is to break out of just being by yourself. Maybe reach out to somebody you haven't talked to in a little while. See what they're up to. And know that you are always more than your productivity. I think that's been stressed throughout this pandemic quite a bit. We can do a lot of things. We can't do everything all the time. And that is really important for us to just be okay with. We can get done what we have time for. We can get done what we have effort for. And maybe that's not everything. So I think it's important that we get familiar with that feeling of knowing that the to-do list will never always be fully done. Can we be okay with that? How do we know when we've done enough for today? Because you are more than your productivity. You are a person who has just as much freedom to go and do something you enjoy instead of something you're required or obligated to do. So balance that for yourself. See what it's like when you walk away from that feeling of I need to be productive. And before I jump into this one, I will say, if anybody has any questions, just a reminder, you can throw those in the chat. If you're looking or interested in anything, feel free. I'll do a Q&A at the end. So if anything comes up, I'll get to whatever you have. So you can throw those in the chat if you want to. The next part of this, I'll go through some of the resources that students have access to. So obviously, being from the counseling center and being a counselor, we do have counseling services that you can access, but there are a lot of different supports that we can look to in times of need. So I would say if you're struggling, it's probably best to reach out to the people that you feel the most comfortable with first. See what it's like to just share with a friend what you're going through. Check in with a family member who you're close to. That could be a parent, that could be a sibling, aunt, uncle, grandparent. Just check in, see how they're doing, and then maybe let yourself share a little bit of honesty. How are you doing with them? And then make that time for check-ins. Doesn't have to be long or take a lot of time. Could be a text here and there, but make the time for that. When you feel like something is beyond maybe the people you're familiar with or kind of know who you are, T-Talk is a really great place to look as well. So T-Talk and Let's Talk I'll talk about because they're a little bit different, but they offer, I think, a good space to start talking with somebody outside of your situation. So T-Talk is a service that our peer educators at the Counseling Center will be providing. It's a good place to talk to someone else who's a student who might be able to relate to what you're going through. You can ask questions about counseling services if you're interested, or you could just like show up and talk to somebody. You can say whatever you need to say. You can complain about an assignment or a friend, a roommate, or you could just like ask questions. I think that'll be a good space, especially if you're just looking to talk to somebody who's not like a staff or faculty member. So the times aren't set up yet, but they'll be available soon. You can check on our website and their social media account, which will be at the end. Let's Talk is our a non-clinical service, but you'd be meeting with one of our counselors on staff. So we have Let's Talk hours that are dedicated to drop-in space. So all virtual this semester still. You don't need an appointment or anything. You can just log on our website, see when the hours are, and the Zoom link will be there. One of our counselors will be on the other end. If they're with somebody, you might be in the waiting room for like 10 minutes, but it won't be longer than that. So if you do need to talk with someone who has a little bit of training, active listening, and who maybe can get you connected with counseling services, that's another good place to look. So again, no appointment necessary. Just try it out. If you aren't sure you're ready for the full counseling experience, it's a good first step to try. See if it's appropriate for you. I really prefer the 7 Cups of Tea app. I found it to be really helpful. They have texting active listeners, so you can actually talk to somebody who's trained in listening. But then they also offer different prompts. So there's activities that you can do for your own self-care, for helping yourself if you're stuck in negative thinking. There's some suggestions for like doing creative work to help yourself process feelings and work through some of the stuff that gets us stuck. So it's a great app. It's free. There are some paid services you can add on if you want to, and then they have some counseling services that are available through them. But the free stuff is great. I would highly recommend it if you're looking for an app to be helpful. And then the counseling services offers rapid access appointments. So those are for people who are really struggling in the moment. They're overwhelmed by emotions. Maybe they can't wait for the appointment that they needed to be set up, or they haven't gotten to set up an appointment yet. So Monday through Friday, we have rapid access hours. You can call the office and you'll talk with our office manager, Patty. She'll get you connected with the counselor who is on duty that day. So you'll get to talk with a counselor immediately. Those times are available between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. And then again, 1 p.m. and 3:30 p.m. So if you're interested, feel free to give us a call and you can get connected immediately. And then after hours, because sometimes we get overwhelmed outside of business hours, we do have a crisis hotline available. You can call our office, and if you select option number 2 on the phone, you'll get connected with a crisis counselor right then and there. So you'll get to talk with someone and they can make recommendations for what you're dealing with or how things are going for you. So if you are struggling, please reach out to us. We are here for that. And if you know someone who's struggling, you can also direct them to us. There's a lot of good resources here. I think if you are a friend of someone who's struggling, Let's Talk is a really safe way to kind of start and maybe be present with somebody else. So I've been in Let's Talks where a friend has accompanied someone who was kind of like hesitant to start counseling and they didn't really know what it would be like. So know that you can join a friend who is struggling. Maybe it helps them to feel a little bit more comfortable getting connected. So know that that's an option. All right. So last part of this that I'm going to go through is really some of the specifics to the Counseling Services Center, our resources, what we're doing this semester, how it looks, and then I'll have some contact information before we get to our activity for the day. So we are operating primarily virtual for this semester. We've been doing that over Zoom, which is HIPAA compliant, it's confidential. And you can meet with a counselor once you set up an appointment. They'll do an intake and kind of establish a goal for what you want to work on for the semester. So you can call our office, which is listed there, extension 4416 if you're on campus. And we operate primarily in 202 Hewitt Union right now. It's not our actual home office. We're at a temporary location while a renovation happens. So for this semester, which I think is the last semester, we'll be in 202 Hewitt Union. And we offer individual counseling services, couples counseling services if both partners are students on the campus. And we offer a bunch of group counseling services. So there'll be a wide range of different groups you can choose from. And I know some people get really intimidated by groups. It's hard to imagine like going into a setting with a bunch of people you don't know. But I would say that most people report really good experiences being in a group, because then you realize you're not alone and that other people get what you are going through. So we'll have a pretty good wide range of groups that'll be offered. You can find those on our website. So if you're interested, I would say start there, check it out, see what we have, and maybe there's a place for you in one of those groups. You can always call our office to get more information about any of them. And then we do offer consultation services like Let's Talk, which I talked about already. But for clubs and organizations, we also do presentations. We can come and help support a program or workshop that's going on, because we want to make sure that everybody's taking care of their mental health. So if you're interested or know of a group or club that's interested in having counseling services, either collaborate or support what's going on in your spaces, feel free to reach out to us. There's a request form on our website. And then finally, we're doing things like this today, where we have virtual webinars and workshops. We'll have some in-person stuff from time to time. It really just depends on the weather. We're trying to focus a lot on doing outdoors activities. So at Rice Creek, we're going to be running some stuff. And I think especially around those wellness days that are going on this semester, we'll have some programming just to give you something else to do that doesn't feel like a class. So look out for those. You could follow on our website. You'll see our schedule listed there. A lot of our workshops are focused on helping students learn more about their mental health, developing positive coping skills to help themselves through tough times, and then hopefully meet other people. I know Zoom isn't the ideal place to meet people, but hopefully you'll have some time to interact with someone and get to know somebody else. And then finally, you can always talk to our peer educators. So the P2Ps for short, they are students and would love to be able to answer some of your questions. You can follow them. I've put both of our Instagram accounts. The Counseling Center is Mindful Oz on Instagram at mindful_Oz. And the P2Ps are at Oz peer-to-peer on Instagram as well. So we'll be doing some social media posts throughout the semester. You can follow along there. And if you're interested, feel free to either leave a comment or send a message that way, whatever's easiest. All right, so before we jump into the activity, just one more reminder, you can put any questions that you have or think that I should cover or didn't cover that you were interested in the chat. I'll run this activity and then I'll make some time at the end just to answer some questions for you. So feel free to throw those in the chat. The only thing that you will need for the activity is just a piece of paper and a pen, something to write with. That would be perfect. So I'll give you a second just to grab that stuff. I'm gonna take a drink. Okay. All right, so for this activity, we're gonna do a little grounding exercise. I think it's really helpful when we're feeling really stressed out. So something you can repeat, it's not just like a one and done thing. I think it's a good thing to do to check in with yourself. So you just need a piece of paper, pen, and I would say get cozy in your chair. Make sure you're either sitting up straight or laying down flat, and just make sure that you're comfortable. Notice any tension that you're holding. Notice anything that doesn't feel right. So maybe that's putting your feet flat on the floor. Maybe that's allowing yourself to just relax in your chair. You can close your eyes for this if you're comfortable with that. If you aren't, just find a fixed spot in your room to look at, so be able to focus on something. What we're going to do is start with a nice deep breath in and out. One more deep breath in and out. So on the next deep breath in, I want you to recognize what you're feeling right now and try and find where it's located. It's a little bit different, but see if you can find it in your body. So deep breath in and out. And just notice any feeling, any sensation that's going on for you. Try and give it a word. So maybe that's stressed. Maybe that's anxious. Maybe that's happy. Maybe that's content. Notice what the feeling is. And then notice in your body what tells you you're feeling that way. So if you're stressed, maybe notice that your body's kind of tense. Your stomach's in knots. Chest hurts. Your head hurts. Notice anything that's going on for you. When you notice it, I just want you to say to yourself, I feel this and I feel it here. So I feel calm and I feel it in my stomach. Give it a word and a place. And when you've got that, close your eyes again or keep them open. Take a nice deep breath in and out. And then I want you to say to yourself, you can do this internally or you can say it out loud. I accept all that I feel. I can be with my feelings. And then take another deep breath in. And out. One more deep breath in. And out. if your eyes are closed, you can open your eyes. And you just need your piece of paper and your pen. And what I want you to do is write down just a short description of that feeling. It could be what it feels like inside. It could be what it's about. Keep it short. This isn't a long writing activity. I just want you to jot down what it is you feel. And try and avoid overwhelming yourself, especially if it's a heavy feeling. Just acknowledge what it is. So I'll give you a little bit of time. Write something short and not overwhelming, but about that feeling. I'll give you about 30 more seconds just to keep writing. Okay. So when you've written what you need to write, you can take another deep breath in and out. And now I want you to write down one action that you can take to help yourself through this feeling. So, for example, if you wrote about feeling anxious, what's something that you can do when you're feeling anxious to help yourself through it? Maybe that's like to get up and stretch. Maybe that's to go into a different room. Maybe that's to make sure that you take deep breaths. Maybe that's reaching out to somebody, doing something creative, taking a rest, putting on music. There's a lot of options for that feeling. And then on the flip end, maybe you wrote about something that feels good, happy, content, relaxed. So you're not helping yourself through the feeling. You're helping yourself embrace the feeling. What does that look like? Is that sharing what you feel with somebody else? Checking in with somebody? Is that painting, writing about how it feels to feel okay? Is it just enjoying it, being able to sit with the feeling that you feel? Maybe it's putting on a good playlist. Choose an action that helps you either through the feeling to be with it or to embrace it and enjoy it. And just one action. Make it something that's doable. What's a realistic goal for yourself when you start to feel this way? When you're feeling this way right now? Is there something you can do for yourself today? One realistic action. And when you've got that action, we're going to take one more, the deepest breath that you've taken all day. Breathe in And slowly breathe out. Okay. So what we just did there is a grounding exercise. And I think it's really good for being able to check in with what you're feeling, to acknowledge and validate what you're feeling, and then to know that you have choice in how you respond to that feeling. Sometimes it is good to embrace what we're feeling and just be with it, not to run from it or get distracted from it. And sometimes it's really good to put it to constructive use for ourselves. So it's a very simple practice. And I would say don't make it something overwhelming or that's too strenuous to do for yourself. Try and pick the subtle things that we can do day to day. So a lot of this hopefully was helpful in just making sure that you can prioritize what you feel and that you have some choice in it. And remember to plan for your own self-care. What can you do during these hard times? How can you cope with some of these feelings? And then who in your life can you turn to when you need to? So I hope that was helpful. So our contact information is available, 202 Union. Phone number is listed there. Our website, if you want to check out and learn more about our services. And then I'd highly recommend our Instagram accounts just to get a sense of what's going on. We post a lot of programs and events that are coming up on there as well as self-care. So that's the presentation. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself if you want to ask, or you can put those in the chat. I'm happy to stick around if you have any questions or just want to ask anything. I'm here. So I appreciate you being here and taking the time to really take care of your mental health, at least plan for taking care of your mental health. So that's that. And I hope to have the recording up in case you missed some of it in the near future. I think it should be up probably at the end of this week. All right. Well, take care, everybody.